So welcome to the Peak Day podcast, where we discuss fertility and natural family planning with our friends. Today's guest is Amanda Rowetter. Amanda is a degreed nutritionist who loves the idea of evangelizing through nutrition. Her ministry, Temple and Table, combines theological discussion with practical nutrition, celebrating the deep connection between body and spirit with wholesome food, real conversation, and authentic community. Amanda is a regular contributor to CCL's Family Foundation magazine and also contributes to the lifestyle and nutrition area of the Fertility Science Institute. Recently, Amanda wrote a cookbook titled Food for Fertility: Recipes to Improve Health and Manage PCOS. Thank you for joining us again, Amanda.
It's so great to be back with you. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. How exciting. A new cookbook. This is the first book that you have written, is that right?
Yes, I didn't think I would say I was a published author this early on, but I was so excited that Couple to Couple League approached me with this opportunity, and it's just been a labor of love and really fun to develop. So,
well, before we talk about the cookbook in particular, what was it that motivated you to become interested in helping women with their health and nutrition?
So it kind of evolved over time. I ended up switching. I changed my major a few times in college and ended up graduating with a degree in nutritional sciences. And I was pre-med when I was in college. So I wanted to be a pediatrician at the time and just kept getting involved with things that were women's health. And people asked me, "Are you interested in obstetrics and gynecology?" And just because I just kept getting pulled into it in different ways, I ended up getting a concentration of my master's was in women's health, and then I worked for the Women, Infants, and Children program and worked with pregnant women and breastfeeding women and kids up to 5. And as I got more and more into my ministry, I just realized this great need for women to be empowered to know about their fertility, know how they could contribute to the health of their general health, but also know how that pertains to their cycle and their fertility. So it just evolved over time, but I feel so blessed, that Couple to Couple League kind of came into my life and into my ministry, and it's just been such a joy.
How does nutrition affect fertility?
There's actually a few ways that it contributes to kind of your fertility during your cycle. I touched on this in my previous podcast about the different nutrients that are really important during each phase of your cycle. So our body has different needs depending on what hormones it needs to produce and things like that. And you can be aware of those things and focus on the foods that provide those. There also, chronic inflammation causes our immune system to block hormone signaling. So that can lead to heavy periods, skipped periods, increased PMS symptoms, lack of ovulation, things like that. So focusing on anti-inflammatory foods, eating minimally processed foods. The other thing is cortisol, which is our stress hormone, which is good, but it can affect our ovulation, lowers our production of follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. It can affect ovulation. It can impact the health of your follicle. And so you can affect your cortisol levels by focusing on stable blood sugar levels, which I'll probably get into more detail later in the podcast. But basically, that long answer says there's such a big tie to nutrition and fertility. And I know Couple to Couple League has always had a nutrition arm. And so with the cookbook and with my work with Couple to Couple League, it really focuses on the practical application. How do you integrate that into your life?
So let's talk about PCOS in particular. There seems to be an increase in PCOS and just irregular cycles in general. Why is nutrition so important when you're looking at PCOS and lessening its symptoms?
PCOS is actually pretty complicated. It's complicated to diagnose because it's very complex. It has to do with hormonal kind of disorder. Um, it it's difficult to diagnose because it shows up in a lot of different ways, but it's characterized by elevated levels of insulin, luteinizing hormone, and androgens, which are male hormones, and then they all contribute to just an improper functioning of the ovaries. So when charting, which of course Couple to Couple League has this great app called Peak Day to help you with that if you're not already charting or if you're struggling with your charting, it's a really easy way. But that's usually where you can see the big picture and start to see there could be something going on here. So women show sometimes long to very long cycles. Sometimes they don't ovulate at all. They have a very short luteal phase sometimes, painful periods. Um, Sadly, it can lead to miscarriage and infertility when you have PCOS, diagnosed or undiagnosed. Other things that people see are like acne, obesity, sometimes like excess body hair, like what you would normally see on a man, not to that degree, but it's just something to look out for, right? Your body's trying to tell you something when you're having these things like acne or weight gain. Why it's really important to integrate nutrition or to attack it by using nutrition is that you control what goes in your body. And I think a lot of times when women are diagnosed with these different things, issues with their cycle or different things, sometimes it can feel like we're working against our body or that we just have an attitude that's like, there's something wrong with me, right? And God made you good and God made you beautiful. And so when we focus on our nutrition and the mindfulness of when we're eating and what we're putting in our bodies and how it's making us feel, it can really just make us feel empowered. And it's also just a way to worship the God who created us, right? It's a way to honor our bodies as temples, and we serve out of our bodies. So that's really, I think, where addressing PCOS through nutrition just kind of elevates it to a different level and gives a different approach to it.
So, thus, you have developed a cookbook
Yes.
specifically for helping to alleviate some of those symptoms through nutrition.
Nutrition is really important with PCOS because I mentioned that there is um, there's some elevated insulin levels, and that can be addressed through your diet because you can help your body have a better sensitivity to insulin if you try to keep your blood sugar levels stable. So I just want to give a few quick tips for listeners or viewers that help with that. And that's avoid eating carbohydrates alone. So I am not the biggest fan of low carbohydrate diets necessarily. I just think you have to eat the right carbohydrates and never eat them alone. So you always want to pair them with a protein and healthy fats. So that's good news out there, you know? Because I think carbohydrates are sometimes posed as an evil thing, but they're an important macronutrient. It just has to be eaten with complex carbohydrates, which we can talk about, and not eaten alone. When you eat them alone, it spikes your blood sugar. Um, and then the other thing is to keep your blood sugar stable, you want to eat within an hour of waking, or about an hour, and then eat every 3 to 4 hours. So I think a lot of times women, when they're struggling with maybe trying to lose weight or things like that, they actually don't eat enough, and their metabolism slows. And when they do eat a meal, it spikes their blood sugar. And the goal is to keep it as even as possible because that's what insulin does. But especially when we're talking about PCOS, we really want to focus on that. That's foundational to PCOS nutrition. And then the last thing that I'll mention is consuming adequate protein. A lot of times women aren't getting enough. And a quick little general baseline is to take your weight divided by 2.2. So that converts your weight in pounds to kilograms, and then multiply that by 1.2. So, and that gives you your grams to shoot for per day. That's a baseline. It's going to be different if you exercise, if you have a very, very rigorous exercise routine, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, different things like that. But that's a general baseline. So, for example, a woman that weighs 150 pounds would consume 82 grams a day as a goal. So, take a quick assessment of that and do that quick equation. And I think it will really help you to integrate protein into every meal and snack. That's how you hit it.
So, with the women that you are seeing through your ministry, Temple and Table, what trends are you observing when it comes to women's fertility?
What I have personally seen in the women and couples that I work with, and also just generally trends that I'm seeing on social media and research in the nutrition world, is that women are kind of looking for other solutions other than birth control. And I think we're becoming more wise to knowing about our cycle, being empowered by that instead of fighting against our fertility. And women are really looking for natural solutions. I think in general, we're looking to lower our toxic load, if you would call it. Like there's a big trend in moving away from toxic products, having more natural, everything from skincare to beauty products to the cleaners we use in our home. Just lowering our toxic load in general, and then just becoming more educated. There's so much out there on nutrition and how to address it. I think I said this in my last podcast too, because I'm a big proponent of this. Just make sure that you're getting your advice on that from reputable sources. That would be my only cautionary tale, but that's really the trend I'm seeing. And I think it's positive that women are being more open with their struggles with their cycle and their fertility, to be honest, because I think it empowers us as women to talk about that with one another. And we saw that at Seek when we were there together, Martha, right? That just opening up the conversation, women are very vulnerable and they want to talk about it. And it's a beautiful thing that we're seeing. A lot of times it was, I'm just dealing with my own fertility. Hush, hush, keep it under the radar. If you happen to have a miscarriage, if you deal with PMS, I just have to deal with it. It's just a part of being a woman. And it's really not, or it doesn't have to be. And it's just a really beautiful thing that's where women's empowerment is going. And I hope it continues to move in that direction.
So, what kind of a difference could a woman possibly see in her health when she does improve or even tweak or change her nutritional strategies?
I think that the really good news that I have to share is even small changes impact your health. And I would even suggest making small changes instead of big sweeping things, because your body has an innate ability to heal. If you put in the right fuel for your body, fertility is a natural process. Your cycle is a natural process. So you can start to see, if you're struggling with really severe symptoms around your period, really severe, like heavy periods, heavy bleeding. I had very severe PMS symptoms. And as soon as I started to learn more about the deep connection between nutrition and my cycle and what my body needed at different parts of my cycle, I really started to see a difference in the severity. It was much less severe. So women could see that. Honestly, I have seen couples get pregnant faster. Women coming off of the pill, your body can heal faster and start to balance the hormones that naturally, the natural occurrence of hormones, I should say, faster. So there is so much to be said for what you'll experience, and you should see those changes pretty quickly.
You mentioned Seek. We were just at Seek. There were 20,000 college age young men and women at Seek, and we had a chance to talk to probably over 500 young women alone
Yeah.
at our table, and their common comments were, I'd love to be able to keep track of my cycles, but they're so irregular, or they're so long in between. Why would I need to track them? What would you say to a young woman who says she doesn't really need to track her cycles because they're just so irregular?
I think what I would say to you, what we did say to young women, and what I would say to those listening to this, or if you're a mother with with young women that aren't tracking yet, um, I would say that's even more of a reason to track your cycle, right? Every woman should, but if you aren't as regular, it's even more important because that gives you a chance to see that overall big picture, trends of what's happening, and that helps you to understand where you can address things. And it also helps you to be more educated when you go to your medical provider, right? When I was a young woman seeing my gynecologist, I actually didn't know what questions to ask. And I didn't have, I was, I started tracking late, sadly. So we were telling these college women, start tracking now. Like the earlier you track, the better, is how I feel. And I heard from so many young women there that did track their cycle or were just starting to, that they felt so empowered, that they were more in tune with their body. What a beautiful thing that is. And honestly, it's such a countercultural thing, to be perfectly honest. I think a lot of times we're told that our fertility is bad, that we shouldn't want to have families, that the only way to empower ourselves is to take something that's synthetic, that does not honor the natural rhythms of our body. And honestly, I was surprised by how many young women were already tracking their cycles, weren't you, Martha? And it was such a beautiful thing. And so many um, wanted to come off of birth control or had. And that's an important place to track as well, so that you can see that. Good for you if you've made that decision. I know it's not an easy decision because a lot of times your provider is giving you that as your only option. But gosh, I can't stress enough, the importance of tracking your cycle. And Peak Day does such a good job of making it super user friendly. It's backed by over 50 years of science. The algorithm is so accurate. And um, there's so many apps out there that are um, put out that have questionable content, that have ads, and you're not going to get any of that with the Peak Day app. And so that's a great place to start, whether you track your cycle right now or not, but especially if you don't already.
So, when is it a good time for a young woman to see a healthcare provider for maybe irregularities in their cycles or just their cycles in general?
Yeah, so I think seeing a gynecologist or a medical provider is important once you begin your cycle. And I would suggest going to Fertility Science Institute and visiting the provider directory, see if there's someone in your local area that knows about NFP, can educate you on your cycle, that will take that time rather than just giving you the solution of birth control as the only option, because sadly it's happening so much to young women where they feel pressured. And then after that, you can discuss it with your medical provider, but it might be if you're not sexually active, then it might be where you go once a year, or if you're having more irregular cycles or severe symptoms around your cycle, come with that knowledge, present it to your provider, express your interest in knowing natural approaches to addressing it rather than synthetic. Like, you have to, I think the more that you're empowered as a young woman, especially, to speak about your own body and your knowledge of your body to a healthcare provider, it's so important.
Yeah, and if you're not getting the answers that you are really seeking, then you need to, you know, try somewhere else. And you mentioned Fertility Science Institute, the website. We've got that directory of providers. That's an excellent place to start. So,
Absolutely.
great suggestion. Can you speak at all about maybe other problems that women are having with regard to their fertility and cycles that could be improved with nutrition?
Some women experience really heavy bleeding, really prolonged cycles. And the things that you want to focus on with that, as far as nutrition goes, are things with magnesium, vitamin A, vitamin K, because those help with clotting. And then you also want to focus on iron rich foods because you're losing, so much blood. And then fatty acids can help with that, healthy fatty acids. Um, so with like magnesium, vitamins A and K, we're talking dark leafy greens. You can get a chlorophyll supplement to add to a smoothie to increase that. Fatty acids are like flax oil. They have flax oil supplements available if you're not so crazy about flax oil. Flax meal is great to add to smoothies, seeds, um, and then full fat dairy. And again, protein is really important with heavy bleeding. Um, and then I mentioned PMS symptoms that can be addressed through nutrition. So those are like low glycemic index foods. Avoiding alcohol before you go into the menstrual phase is really important because that's PMS. A lot of times you have a higher level of inflammation in certain phases. So you want to focus on anti-inflammatory foods, increased fiber intake, and then decreased dairy. Sometimes dairy can be an inflammatory for those women. Um, with fiber, that's kind of like protein. Most Americans don't get enough fiber in our food, and so for women, the recommended amount is about 25 grams a day. For men, it's about 38 grams a day of fiber. Um, I think the average intake when they surveyed Americans is like between 10 and 15 grams. So we're getting about 50%. So we're definitely in kind of deficiencies. And then again, those dark leafy greens, nuts and seeds are great for PMS symptoms. And then vitamin C is super anti-inflammatory. Vitamin C is also great for PCOS. And I always told my WIC clients because it was easy for them to remember, but think of vitamin C as the sun, right? And so foods that are colors like the fire or heat, so red, yellow, green, red, yellow, orange, those kind of fruits and vegetables that have those colors indicate vitamin C. And then if you take those with an iron rich source, it helps you absorb it. So yeah, those are some things that women experience that can be addressed specifically through nutrition. But you'll find that if you lower your intake just generally of processed foods and sub that for whole foods, that you will see an improvement across the board. I mean, because that just lowers your toxic load, like we talked about. It lowers your intake of inflammatory producing foods, and your body just loves it, right? It knows how to use whole foods.
Right. Our bodies can, heal themselves when given the proper building blocks.
Exactly.
And just making small little tweaks and changes can make a big difference, a noticeable difference.
One more thing that I wanted to mention is water intake, because when you experience thirst, you've actually been dehydrated well before that. So, quick tip for water intake, this is for everybody, men and women, is to just take your weight in pounds, divide it by 2, and that's the amount of water in ounces that you should be shooting for a day. But maybe overshoot that because, especially if you're exercising or anything like that. And we're also starting off probably dehydrated. And I live in Colorado, so we're already dry. So I usually shoot for much more, 10 to 20 ounces at least per day.
What would you say your impression is from the SEEK conference and from working with women through Temple and Table? Are they open to trying alternatives to, say, hormonal contraceptives that are, just pretty much generally prescribed, as an answer to all problems?
I think by and large, women are trying to embrace more natural approaches to fertility. And I think the more that they're educated about hormonal birth control, the side effects, they're experiencing the side effects. And they're also, I think there's a general just desire to be empowered as women by knowing our cycle, being more in tune with our bodies, and I think we're just tired of being fed the 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 lie, to be frank, that our fertility is bad, that it's something that should be treated like a disease. And what was the most sad to me are the women that were put on birth control, have come off it, and they're having the hardest time. And that doesn't happen with everybody, but it does happen. And the sad thing to me is that their provider did not educate them on everything that they were potentially doing and the increased risks for all kinds of things, everything from breast cancer to deep vein thrombosis to heart attack. You know, there are studies out there. I actually looked on the Planned Parenthood website, Martha, before this podcast, because I just wanted to see what was out there. And honestly, everything from Planned Parenthood to even government websites, I was kind of digging around, tells women that it's totally fine. There are no real risks with taking birth control. I wrote down a quote from the Planned Parenthood website. It says, many people use the pill with no problems at all. No problems at all. I mean, we are being lied to. And I think women are becoming wiser to it. And I'm so glad that they are. And I'm so glad that organizations exist like Couple to Couple League that are fighting against that. And we met so many great organizations too that are kind of in this fight with us at Seek, that are really trying to educate and give women these more natural approaches so that they can embrace the natural rhythm of their body and embrace the beauty of our fertility that God created.
It was beautiful to see the young women and their sincerity and their earnestness in trying to do the right thing as far as the teachings of the faith, and to not be using birth control for various things. And they were, when we presented them with, the Peak Day app, being Catholic from the roots up, and not being fed a bunch of questionable ads, and not selling their information, just on and on, all the good things about Peak Day. They were just thrilled. And I mean, they were like, where do I sign up? They were so excited about it. It was beautiful to see that they were looking for alternatives. So what are your hopes and expectations for the PCOS cookbook?
So I would love to get into as many hands as possible. It was really fun to see women's reaction to it, because I think especially for, the women that had it, or it was fun to have women go, I got to get this for my friend. She struggles with PCOS, right? And I think they were just grateful to have a practical application of, all of this nutritional advice. And my true hope, though, and I kind of allude to this in the forward of the cookbook, is, I prayed through the development of this book and of these recipes, and really what was put on my heart is for women to embrace the beauty of their body, and that through cooking and through nourishing their body well, that they're actually worshiping the God that created them. And it's beautiful to approach it that way when you feel like your body's working against you. So I hope that women sense that integration, that they are more mindful of the foods that they're putting in their body and how it makes them feel. And in conjunction with, using the Peak Day app and the tools that are available, especially through Couple to Couple League, that it kind of all works in concert together. I think I just hope it's a really beautiful addition to their kitchen and to their life, and that they just Love the food too, because it's really good.
So along with your beautiful, delicious, and very visually appealing recipes in the PCOS cookbook, Couple League has taken Marilyn Shannon's fertility cycle and nutrition book, which it's a pretty hefty looking book, and chock full of excellent information. And we've broken it down into smaller booklets, according to the different subjects in that larger books. And one of them is PCOS, like what is it, what you can do with supplements and nutrition to help alleviate some of those symptoms. So we're offering that PCOS booklet and your PCOS cookbook on our website as a combo. So the two together, you're going to get some great education and some really great tasting recipes for PCOS.
Yeah.
Another good point that was brought up is, I think anxiety and depression are very prevalent in society now, and it especially affects young people, young women. How can a young woman experiencing anxiety or depression improve their mood with nutrition?
Interestingly enough, I didn't mention this before, but um, the use of synthetic sex hormones has actually been, um, when it interacts with sex hormone receptors, it can actually affect the structure and function of the brain. And it affects those areas that regulate our mood, our cognition, and how we and our sex drive. So it's very interesting that that's never brought up, right? But it can actually alter your brain chemistry. So even more so, um, you want to look for natural ways to approach that. And nutritionally, what you want to focus on are good, healthy fats, because that helps support brain health, and things like nuts and flax oils, and um, vitamin D is also great, vitamin E. So, as far as supplements, like a fish oil supplement is actually really great. And if you can find a supplement that is like derived from whole food of some kind, like cod liver oil is great. In pill form, it's not it's not so great tasting, but in pill form, it's fine. Um, that's just really simple, you know, things that you can do. And then honestly, regulating your blood sugar, like we talked about before, helps a great deal with mood as well.
So another partnership that Couple to Couple League has with you at Temple and Table is the new Revelation 90 Lenten Challenge. Can you tell us about that and how Temple and Table is an integral part of that challenge?
Yes, and I'm so excited for this. We are partnered with Soulcore as well. So our goal is after the 90 days that you have happier, healthier, smarter fertility, right? Is kind of the tagline. So when you really, it'll have live webinars. There's a great journal. I think the other thing about the journal and integrating prayer and things like that is that can really help with that anxiety and depression that we talked about too. And it also can integrate the mindfulness of how you're feeling when you eat certain foods, or at different stages of your cycle, and what you were eating at the time. So I encourage people to use it that way. And I'm also doing live webinars about once a month over the course of the 90 days. Some of the topics that I'm covering there are nutrition through each phase of this cycle, a Lenten one about feasting and fasting, and then how to nourish your temple without a table. So, if people are on the road or traveling, or if they're a college student that doesn't really have access to a large kitchen, that's really what that's for. And then I also have a pantry guide. So, that just helps, kind of take the guesswork out of it. If you have things in your kitchen that already support your fertility as far as ingredients go, you can throw together a meal pretty easily. So that's really the usefulness of the pantry guide.
It's a great challenge for young women to do as a group. They can give each other support and kind of bounce ideas off of each other as to what you want to challenge yourself with for that particular week. And even just as we said, when you're in communion and community with others who are going through the same things that you're going through, it really helps give you a more positive outlook on things.
I just love that aspect of this too. There is an online portal, but it was really fun to see Girls at Seek sign up as a group or do it together, with their campus ministry or with their sports team, or do it with your Bible study, things like that.
Yeah, the journal that comes with it, it's mailed to you when you register, and it is an excellent resource for that journey. So
It's so well done.
taking advantage of that journal will just make it all that more fulfilling for them, I think. Yeah,
I agree.
So Amanda, for anyone who is interested in the cookbook in particular, and in your ministry, Temple and Table, how can they get a hold of you?
So the best way is going to my website, templeandtable.com. And if you sign up I have a quarterly newsletter that has recipes and blogs, different things like that. That's a great way. And then you can find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram. The handle is at Temple and Table, and it's written out. And then the cookbook is available through Couple to Couple League, and you can purchase it as a bundle with the other PCOS book, as Martha mentioned. And then that's also where you can sign up for Revelation 90. And I hope that you'll join us for that Lenten challenge.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us on the Peak Day podcast once again. It's always
My
a pleasure
pleasure.
to have you. Yeah.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.